You are welcome to the June 2019 edition of the Nextier Power Dialogue. The Nextier Power Dialogue meets monthly to advocate for policies, share ideas, pragmatic solutions for the power sector, and also creates a room for networking for business and job opportunities. Today, we are here to discuss a most crucial topic, as so many people would agree with me today. It's on electricity theft for effective metering. I'm sure some of us are already aware of the meter asset provider regulations and the implementations that began last month. But then we have to consider the fact that metering without ensuring proper revenue protection is a scam. And that's just the truth. So today we are here to discuss how we can effectively combat electricity theft so that the metering asset provider regulations and its implementation can actually carry out and enable growth in the sector. Well, to lead us further into the discussions, we'll be having Colin McCollester. I'm going to be reading his bio soon, but before then, please, if you look behind your agenda, at the bottom, you would see a phone number. It's the office line. If you have questions, you can raise up your hand when it's time for audience participation, and you can also send those questions to that number. So please take notes, because it's possible that so many people might want to talk, and we might not be able to get everybody to stand up to contribute. So please, you can also send your questions to that number. Also, there's a survey link. It's not compulsory, but it would really help if you can fill out the survey. It's just for us to know how well we are doing or how badly we are doing, so to speak. So please, it will really help us if you're able to fill out that survey as well. It doesn't have to be right now. It could be later on. It could be even when you get home today. So please. Now, introducing the moderator, Colin McCollester. I'm going to read out his bio. It's too long to cram. So Mr. Colin McCollester is the Enabling Environment Lead of the USAID-sponsored Power Africa NPSP program. NPSP is Power Africa's signature initiative for Nigeria, which supports comprehensive power sector reform, a strengthened enabling environment, and improved investment to improve Nigeria's access to affordable, reliable power. That's a tongue twister. Mr. McCollester has spent the last 5 years working in Deloitte's Federal Energy Practice, where he has managed power sector reform projects for a variety of clients in more than 15 developed and developing countries. His experience includes sector strategy, public-private partnership development, transaction advisory, utility operational improvement, policy implementation, community engagement, and long-term sector planning. Before joining Deloitte, he worked as a system engineer for a major power utility. Please, with a round of applause, let's welcome Colin McCollester. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate Nextier for putting this on. I always love seeing how involved people get and how passionate people are about the sector. We're here today to discuss the importance of metering and loss reduction that we know afflicts so many of the discos in the sector at large, and try to see if we can come up with some ideas for how we might be able to remedy some of the issues affecting the sector. So I'm going to first introduce our other panelists. First, we have Mr. Emeka Nwabueze, the CEO of Integrated Power Nigeria Limited. He is educated in London, England, with a Bachelor's of Science in Computer Systems and Business Administration and an MBA in International Business from the University of East London. He started his career with financial services in London before moving to Nigeria as management staff of defunct First Inland Bank and Fin Bank, and later FCMB. He left banking in 2013 to join Integrated Power Nigeria Limited. He is currently the CEO of the company, and Integrated Power is one of the NERC-approved meter asset providers. If you could come up. Good to have you. Next, we have Mr. Rahul Singh, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Kanu Electricity Distribution Company. He's the COO of Kanu Disco. In Nigeria, he worked for the 4Power Consortium, the owners of Port Harcourt Electricity Disco, and has been responsible across all functional responsibilities of privatized power distribution companies across operations, maintenance, finance, commercial operations, projects, planning, construction, legal, and regulatory issues, among others. Okay. And then finally, I have Engineer B.A. Mustapha, who is the MD CEO of Yola Disco. He read electrical engineering from Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. He worked with the Federal Ministry of Power from 2001 to 2015 and served as the Special Advisor Technical for the Minister of Power from 2013 to 2015. He was seconded to Yola Disco as MD CEO in 2015, and he's joining us today to talk about loss reduction. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
It's good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
All right, so now that I've introduced all of our panelists, I'm not sure where Rahul is, but we'll let each of the panelists give a few minutes about loss reduction and the current efforts that their entities are going on. I'll start with the MD here and ask you to give us a short introduction of kind of what Yola is working on for loss reduction. And yeah.
Thank you very much, Colin. Yola Electricity Distribution Company has clearly stated is the distribution company that is responsible for the distribution of electricity to the state of Borno, Adamawa, Taraba, and Yobe. In our effort to reduce the losses on our system, first of all, we make sure that our networks are perfect. The technical losses are reduced. Then when it comes to the commercial losses, we normally bank on metering all our customers because metering is a key to commercial losses in the system. Apart from that, even the staff has to be reoriented, not to connive with customers to see that we lost electric revenue in the system. Sites and community leaders, that it is a sin to bypass your meter or get connected illegally without an account of that particular customer. More especially once, if there is a service wire dropped to you, we make sure that that customer is captured. Then from there, we keep on checking the books of our marketers, see what revenue are they doing. All this can be, we are achieving them one by one through our intensive customer enumeration and continuous monitoring of the system. Yeah.
Thank you. And then now I'm going to ask Mr. Nwabueze to give his introduction of his experience and a little bit about how things have been going with the meter asset provider program.
All right, thank you very much. Let me start by thanking you for having me here today. It's indeed a privilege. And the MAP is an initiative that was conceived by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. And it's actually designed to bridge the metering gap in the industry because we've had issues regarding estimated bills and customers complaining that they're being ripped up by the energy providers. I would not like to name names, but really when you look at the industry as a whole, one needs to understand really that electricity is not a social service. It's something that you have to pay for. And at the same time, the customer wants to pay for what he actually consumes. You don't want a customer feeling cheated or feeling that somebody is actually exploiting them or making them pay for a service that they do not actually receive. So, the industry, right from the completion of the reform and the privatization and the handing over of the distribution assets to the discos, we've had this issue of lack of liquidity. I don't want to go into all that, but if you look at the value chain itself, you find out that the discos are the custodians of more than 90% of the liquidity in the industry. And how do they get their money? It's through collection. But the discos themselves, they are being challenged a lot by ATC and C losses. So how do they combat that? They need to, collect. They need to recover, the cost of the energy they distribute to the customers, and they need to get the customers to pay and feel that they're paying for what they're consuming. So there have been previous efforts made to bridge this gap. I don't know if any of you is familiar with the CAPME. CAPME was done some years ago, and it turned out to be a disaster. But MAP is actually supposed to be an improvement to CAPME. And the regulation itself is very robust, it's comprehensive in scope, and the idea is to make sure that this time it works. We learn from the mistakes of CAPME and do something that can actually be worthwhile and be fit for purpose. So we are the MAPs, after rigorous due diligence and scrutiny and all that, they decided to award a no objection license or permit to some companies, private companies, to come in and provide their finance, supply these meters, monitor and maintain them over a period of 10 years. And we've been in the process of trying to iron out some of the gray areas to make sure that this thing is actually very, very effective and it can be something that we can rely on in the long term. So basically, we've gone through all the procurement process of all the different discos, and I happen to be one of the preferred bidders for Kaduna Disco. This is where we are. We are still trying to iron out all the, cross the T's and dot the I's to make sure that everything is in order before we actually, embark on the actual meter rollout, which is scheduled for first or second week of July. That's basically where we are.
All right, thank you for that introduction. We kind of got into the meter asset provider program there, although I want to take a step back first and ask Engineer Mustapha, why has it been so hard for the discos to reduce losses?
What? The demand?
To reduce AT&C.
Yeah, ATC and C losses. One, first of all, as I said, the losses on most of the discos, the technical part is very, very high. Then, how do we cope that losses? The only way to cope the losses is to make sure that your transformer to feeder cables are intact. The LT networks are intact. They are on the correct right size of wires.
Technical losses?
Yeah. The termination aspect has to be bolted properly, not binding, because once, if you bind a jumper without putting cable locks and the rest, you will see that huge losses will occur there. And the worst part is the one that almost the losses from the transformer to the feeder pillar, whereby you can see most of our feeder pillars are in a sorry condition, or I can say dilapidated condition. You need to fuse it correctly.
So these are technical losses, but I think some of what we're talking about here, or more of the point of the meter asset provider, was looking at the non-technical losses, maybe theft, billing,
theft
things like that.
has different phases in the Nigerian electricity industry. As I said, now, as my colleague said, without the meter, people are fed up with estimated billing. And that estimated billing normally is a loss to the discount, because one customer may have service wire dropped into his house, then he will cascade it
To another.
to neighbors. Whereby at the end of the day, when you are estimating, you are just estimating that particular wire. You don't know where that electricity goes. So the only way to cope that one, first of all, you identify all the customers. Carry out proper enumeration. Know customers' number. Thereby, every customer must have an identification number that you have to provide separate supply to each and everybody and meter them properly.
Of course.
The metering alone will not suffice. Then one other thing is that you need to monitor those meters from bypass. Because, for example, a customer will vent 2,000 naira in a month. Maybe after 3 months he has never vented, then there is something wrong with that customer. Either he has bypassed, or he was vacated that place, or the meter is faulty. While on your DT metering, you know what energy is being sent out to that feeder.
Balancing it and monitoring.
Then it's only monitoring and close investigation of the customer's premises and their meter installation can cope that losses.
And one point, too, that you called out that I want to note as well is that it's important to recognize that losses aren't, when we talk about losses, it's not just theft, it's also technical, non-technical, billing. There's a lot of aspects that make up losses. So making sure that we're smart when we talk about it and when we're figuring out how we can help the discos to be successful.
Yeah, the only way to eliminate that aspect of the losses is to get a smart meter for all the customers. Then monitor their consumption.
And before we get too far along, we now have Mr. Singh. I want to give him a few minutes just to introduce himself and talk about his disco's work with loss reduction.
Thank you. Thank you, Colin. My name is Rahul Singh. I am Chief Operating Officer for Kanu Disco. I've been here 4 years now with Kanu. And while we have been struggling with the everyday challenges that we face, we have been able to reduce our losses considerably from more than 60% when I first came in to around 48% now. And one of the menaces that we have is theft of electricity, naturally, and we are here to talk about that, as well as the challenges that we face in metering and how even metered customers are engaging in theft. There are a number of cases that we are dealing with, continuously. Almost every month we have a slew of cases being brought to us about people having bypassed their meter. So I'll leave it to you to go ahead and let's talk about it further. Thank you.
Great. And you mentioned your loss reduction efforts. Have there been any interventions that have been most successful for your disco?
Primarily, we did install nearly 65,000 meters in 2017 and 18. And actually 2016, 17, and just a few in 2018. And the 65,000 meters have basically brought us the maximum boost in revenue from the non-MD group. Just nearly 50% of the meters that were installed in the MD customers group. And some of the key things we discovered were, large customers, industrial customers with whose billing was would have been 150 million, 160 million, were engaging in some kind of bypass or tampering with the meter, which resulted in very low billings of 50 to 60 million. And people were still happy that 50 million from one customer is a big deal. But it was just fortuitous that we had an insider who, who blew the whistle on this company, and we were able to go and check, and they were using techniques to bypass. They even stalled us from entering the premises and looking for and checking the meter. So we had to use, the police to enable us to enter and check. And I can tell you the bill for loss of revenue that we raised was nearly, I think, around 900 million.
Oh, wow. It's a significant amount of cash.
That's a significant amount of money. So after that, we decided we have to go around and replace all the meters that were at least 5 to 6 years old, other than the new meters that we have brought ourselves and installed. So, so far, I think we have replaced around 480 or so meters.
Okay.
And that has given us a very big boost in our collections as well. And we have seen at least, in certain cases, up to 25% increment in billing. In other cases, 10 to 12%. So we are still, that program is still ongoing. So we hope by the end of this year we would have done much better.
Oh, that's great. That's good to hear.
Thank you.
Now I want to ask Mr. Nwabueze, since everybody here is interested in the meter asset provider, how it's going, as a map provider, would be interested to hear your perspective on how the procurement has gone so far, and if there's any issues or areas for improvement in terms of getting meters to customers.
Yes. First of all, I would like to take this question in two ways. First of all, we need to look at the regulation itself before we look at the implementation, because the two are two different things. The regulation is well conceived, is good enough as far as we are concerned, but we are more worried about the implementation itself, because there's been quite a number of deviations from the regulation itself. When you look at metering and what it intends to achieve, that's the reduction of ATC&C, revenue assurance, improved liquidity in the industry. You cannot meter a customer without revenue assurance. It goes hand in hand. I mean, smart meter is only smart when you can actually monitor it real time and online. You'll be able to analyze the data, the business intelligence aspect of it. And you cannot do that without an AMI. That's the back office infrastructure. All of this were included in the regulation from the onset. But when it now came to the implementation itself, the issue of pricing now came in, because by the time you price the meters and then price the back office and then price the communication medium, you find out that the cost is quite high in terms of the unit cost. This is what informed them. Well, it raised an alarm with the NEC commissioners. So for them, it's like you cannot burden a customer, especially in the face of current economic realities. You cannot burden a customer and expect in a retail customer, like an R1 customer, to pay over 70,000 naira for a meter. Even if you spread it over a period of 20 years, that customer is going to struggle to pay for it. So what they thought was this: why don't we just meter the customers, and then we can now talk about the revenue assurance later. That was the first, opinion they gave. But we now said to them, listen, it's two-way, it's a two-way traffic. We are financing these meters. We are borrowing money to procure these meters, install them, maintain and manage them for over a period of 10 years. Okay? The customer is supposed to pay us bit by bit, by installment, all right, monthly through their vending before we can now recover our money. If there's no revenue assurance, how do we get our money back? If we put these meters in the customer's premises and the customer does not pay, how do we get paid? We can't get paid. So they turned around and they suggested that maybe the best thing is to separate the two, map you focus on the metering side of things, let the discos provide their own back office infrastructure. But that wasn't part of the regulation. So now this is where we are. The discos are complaining that we are bringing fresh investors, which are the MAPs, to do this. Now you're separating the two. So now we have to go and start looking for fresh finance to do the back office. So we are haggling over that, and that is causing a lot of delays. Some of the discos have promised that yes, they are going to do it. Some of them are saying we will do it, but we don't know exactly when to start this. So it's affecting the timelines that we set originally. Like, for instance, some discos have managed to sign off on their MSAs with the MAPs. But what about the implementation? What about the rollout plan? Nothing has been agreed. These are some of the issues that we are trying to trash out, and it's causing a lot of delays. We are just hoping that soon enough that we can come to some sort of resolution as to how to go about this, and then we can now move on. In terms of the preparedness of the MAPs or the readiness to protocol these meetings, yes. My company, I can only speak for my company, I know we are ready, all right? The local manufacturers are on standby. Some of them have the capacities, others done, but we know that we have engaged them, we have, agreements and everything, they're just there, waiting for us to, to give them the go-ahead. Yeah. But the foreign suppliers, if you don't have a genuine agreement or contract, you can't go and commit your funding to import meters that you're not sure that somebody's going to take from you. So this is where the delays are. So as soon as all these issues with the MSA is resolved, we are good to go.
And based on that, I'll ask Engineer Mustapha, how, from your perspective and hearing some of that, how have things gone from the DISCO side of these procurements for these meter asset providers?
Yeah, the procurement for the MAPs were done transparently, according to the regulation. Then, as he said, the main challenge is the back-end equipment. For Yola Disco, I cannot talk for the other discos. For Yola Disco, we just awarded the contract for the backup facility, our meter infrastructure, so that any meter MAP installed can be monitored by both sides for transparency purpose. From there, I think we are going to start deploying the meters in the next 3 weeks or so. We concluded everything with our MAP, and he promised to deploy those meters to Yola first week of July.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. And then I'll ask this question to Mr. Singh. We're hearing that the meter asset program procurements are getting started. As you're getting started, do you have kind of a strategy for how you're deploying the meters and making decisions for who gets a meter first?
Yes, we do. The thing is, all our plans are coming to naught because of changing regulations. I would agree with my colleague here with the MFP meter provider. Initially, the objective was to have a competitive bidding and select the lowest bidder, right? And we went through 2 rounds of qualification. The first one was expression of interest, where we asked for a set of documents to be provided along with your UI. So anybody who just completed the documentation was eligible. And we got around more than 21 or 22 EOIs. But number of people did not submit all the documentation. So we could qualify only 15 for the next RFQ and RFP round. The next round was technical qualification, the technical bid, where they submit their meter details and what is their supply chain and manufacturing and everything, and their experience, of course, and the financial strength. Based on that, we qualified 7 bidders to bid for the, to provide the financial bid, and 5 bidders qualified, basically, out of the 7, to be, evaluated for their financial bids. And we, of course, we ranked them on the basis of lowest cost to highest.
But once you get started, is there a strategy for what part of your service area is going, where the meters are going to be rolled out first, or is there any kind of plan to kind of work out the kinks?
I'm coming to that.
Yeah. Oh,
so
apologies.
We selected 5. Naturally, when you say competitive bidding, you expect at the end of the process you'll have one winner, right? And we presented our evaluation to NERC for approval, and then we were asked for a meeting. And NERC said, look, we are giving you the prices of the meters. For a single phase meter, it is some 35,000 naira, and for a 3-phase, it's around 65,000 naira, somewhere around that. And so you select the top 3 and you share the meter quantum between the 3. Now, our idea was, if this was going to be the end of it, why didn't you give us the meter cost up front, and we would have asked anybody who was good enough to come along and give us the meters, right? But anyway, but then we went ahead and said, look, all these 5 guys are good enough, and if they all agree to supply meters at this price, let's call all of them. And we called all of them, and we agreed on a distribution.
Okay.
And our the DISCO is divided into 9 regions, 4 in Kanu, 3 in Katsina, and 2 in Jigawa. So each MAP has been given 2 or 1 region. Kanu Central, which has the maximum number of customers, nearly 200,000. That has gone to 1 map, so a single region to. So it is distributed more or less evenly. Of course, people with the higher cost who were lower in the ranking got slightly lower numbers, like 75,000 to 100,000. But they were all agreed that, this is a good enough distribution. Now, in the first phase, as I say, I mean, I'm not sure because the second phase numbers are not yet out, but the first phase, they say, is customers are required to pay the full cost of the meter up front. So we have a process where we have, we'll provide space in the regional offices to all the MAPs, right? And they'll have their store and everything. Then any applicant who comes and pays the money, the money, of course, goes to the MAPS account, not to our account. We get we get information that this customer has paid. We do a pre-site inspection. If there's a need for, installing a pole or some other hardware or this thing, or upgrading the conductor. And then after the pre-metering inspection, we say go ahead and the MAP shall go and install meters by the next day. So the whole process from application or paying the money up front to installation of meters would not take more than 2 days.
Wow.
Okay, so that's our plan for now. The other part is, having been here for so many years, one thing I've learned is people are not so willing to pay up front. Either, even if they have the money, they say, look, we are happy with the estimated bill we get. They'll call it crazy bill, they'll, curse the discos and curse everybody, but in the end, a person who gets a bill of, let us say, 10,000 naira will end up paying 2,000 naira, and they're happy with it. even the large houses that you'll see. Some of the people where we installed meters, the ones that we brought, have already asked us, take this meter back if you don't want it. The 10,000, and that guy was, he was paying quite a lot, considering, he would be paying 10,000 naira in a month in the estimated bill data. And he'll say, that's all I can pay, that's the kind of consumption I have. And then we went ahead and installed a meter. That 10,000 naira doesn't last them a week. So with a meter, he's ending up paying nearly 40 to 50,000 naira in a month. So we have these discrepancies, and you'll have, because of the estimation methodology, you have the lower income group more or less, cohabiting in the same areas. On the main road, you'll have the big houses, and behind the big houses, you'll have the low-income housing. And because of the methodology that we use, those people with the lower income housing, smaller plots, smaller houses, they end up also getting very high bills. So those are the people who are actually, losing out.
Yeah.
So our intent was to, drive people who have high consumption, the three-phase people with large number of appliances, air conditioners, refrigerators, and things like that. And we have our strategies. We are working with the maps where any person with large outstanding accumulated outstanding arrears will go and disconnect on the pretext that you have not been paying your bills. They will kind of persuade him to buy a meter. So we'll be working with, we have already put it in action to an extent. Like last month we disconnected more than 3,000 houses. They were all three-phase customers. So that's going on. So we are hoping that the second phase, actually the second phase was what I was thinking that we'll be doing from the very beginning, where we are given a fixed price for the meter service charge, right? Which we collect and pass it over to the map, right? So the easiest thing would be to recover the cost of the meter through tariff, right? Whether it's a 3-year period or a 5-year period or a 10-year period, doesn't matter. Unfortunately, things are not going that way for now. We hope later on things will change, so maybe a few months from now we'll be doing mass metering of every customer, regardless of whether you pay upfront or not.
It's important.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So now that we've heard a little bit about how Kanu is going to be rolling this out, I was interested to hear how Yola will be rolling out the same program, and how customers, since we're all customers here, how customers can expect to engage with the meter asset provider program in Yola.
Our own map stands like that. The map didn't mention that there is a upfront payment, whereby the map doesn't need to finance those meters for 10 years. If a customer paid for a meter, he is up some of the charges that accrued to the financing, which I believe most of the maps are after. And to be realistic, many of the maps, not all of them, think that this map of 18 is a contract that the discos are awarding to them. Most of them didn't understand the methodology of map process, whereby they can finance. They thought discos will just buy those meters and give it to customer. But when we advertise, enlighten them, this is it, some of them would draw. Like for Yola, 10 companies quoted for map. We only pre-qualified 9, then only 1 turned out to be the winner because he could not meet the criteria. Now, when we submitted our map, our maps price to NERC, NERC said, okay, what they don't want to cheat the customers should not be shortchanged. They paid the price, which we enlightened our customers that if you want to pay upfront, this is the cost of the meter. If you want the map to finance it for 10 years, this is how much you will pay for a single phase, 3-phase.
Oh, that's good.
Within 10 years, which majority of our customers opted to buy upfront for the meter.
And so if you pay up front, is there any fee to or what's the fee structure look like to the map?
Yeah, the fixed charge is still there.
Okay.
Yeah, the meter service charge, it goes to the map.
Okay.
But insurance and the rest is off according to the regulation. Because once if you are paying upfront, you will not pay insurance charge, you will not pay other associated charge, but I could not remember it offhand. Those other charges attached to the map financing. Because you have, customers has already paid for that meter. So the financing aspect is off.
Okay, that's helpful to know. And yeah, that's what we've been hearing. Now we'll move over to Mr. Nwabueze, and would be interested to hear how, as a map, do you have plans for how you'll engage the customers or engage, we're talking right now about full payment up front, but with your company or with any of the distribution companies that you work with, are there plans for how it'll be communicated, how you'll engage, and how you'll take information, monitoring and responding to the customers?
Yes, actually there is, because the customers actually belong to the discos. They don't belong to the MAPs. All right, so these are discos customers. So in terms of customer engagement, like sensitization, some sort of campaign to enlighten them, for them to understand that, yes, this thing is actually available now. This is what you need to do in order to get your meters. Yes, I happen to be very lucky because Kaduna, they're very proactive. Kaduna Disco is very proactive. They've already started the campaign weeks ago, and we have not even signed the MSA. So it's already being broadcasted in their local, the radio stations and TV stations. In fact, they are planning to take it to the mosques and the marketplaces, so that before we actually start rolling out, all the customers will be fully aware that, yes, this thing is actually happening.
Yeah.
So once they pay, they get their meters.
Okay. And when they want to request a meter, this is for anybody, do they just come to the disco and say, do they have to apply, or?
Yes, I know. All this is captured in the campaign itself, even the flyers and everything.
Yep.
Now they're focusing on directing the customers to their websites to fill the forms and all that. But if you cannot, you can also go to some of their regional offices. The forms are there for you to fill. Register your interest that you want a meter, and they take it from there. The rest is done.
That's good. That's good. And then one question I have for Mr. Singh. So we recognize metering is extremely important. Loss reduction is a huge challenge in Nigeria. How much loss reduction is Kanu expecting to see from implementing MAP, or how much of an impact do you think this initiative will have?
If we had gone with the original program, we would have seen drastic reduction. But now that we have to wait for the customer to pay upfront for the meter, I can tell you very frankly, people are not willing to pay upfront for the meter unless they are incentivized or persuaded to do so, right? Out of the more than 500,000, nearly 600,000 customers that are to be metered, I don't think more than 50,000 will turn up with money right now across Ketco, all over. And the way to persuade them, of course, is through an awareness program, sensitizing them, sometimes, little bit of persuasion that, people always object that my bills are too high. Say, okay, here is a form. Fill in your name, your account number, your address, phone number, okay? I'm giving you this form, go to my regional office, pay this much amount. In 2 days' time, you will get a meter. So we are not just distributing and collecting bills, we are pushing people to buy a meter if they start talking too much about the amount that they are billed. So there are various programs that we are doing, but again it is, of course we are doing a broadcast and print ads and flyers and so on. But, you know, over the years of this electricity sector, people have become immune to all these messaging. And they say, okay, whatever comes, if somebody comes to my doorstep and knocks on my door and says, look, here's the meter, pay so much, maybe I'll pay. You know, so we have to manage this very well, but at the end of it, if you call the first phase, you know, only upfront payment, I can say maximum of 100,000, and that's not too much.
It's a start.
I
think now we had wanted to, since we're all electricity customers here and metering is such a challenge, we had wanted to open the floor to questions from the audience.
My name is Sean Eleje. I believe the topic has been combating electricity theft for effective metering. First of all, I want to point out that metering a customer doesn't really prevent theft. Sometimes customers who have meters bypass the meter and continue using power without paying for it. So only the engineer Mustapha has said what they've been doing in the Yola disco about combating theft. He says they go to the mosques and preach to them and tell them it's a sin to bypass your meters. Well, that could be effective in Yola. I don't know about Abuja, for instance. And maybe if you begin to go down south, it will be less effective. Now, I'm curious about what you're doing aside from preaching to the people to not do that. If you're doing any other thing to, you know, curb electricity theft, I would be interested in hearing what you're doing. And if you're not doing, I'm also interested to hear if what you're doing so far is enough. Thank you.
And
my name is Ernest Sunday Ugo. In my many new houses and old houses I know of in my area, some that have been using estimated bill have long applied for meter, and some that don't have meter have applied for meter for almost a year, and some for more than 1 year. Up till now, they are saying they're short of meter, and they're refusing to give them meter, even with their money, including me. I'm a victim. I'm happy to be here today. Why? What are the power distribution companies doing about this? Even as I'm here, they were calling for the same light issue in my house. In my house, I built it. What are they doing? They should please do something. That's, I'm even surprised.
that's frustrating.
Okay, good evening. My name is Gloria. My question is, the tariff, the electricity tariff, I want to find out, is it a uniform tariff for everybody? Or is it that in big cities the tariff is different, and for other smaller cities, less commercial cities, the tariffs are different? I really need to know, because I seem to be paying so much. I don't know if other people are paying the same thing, like I do.
Yeah.
I had the CEO for Yola. You were complaining about theft, and some of the things that customers are doing to, you know, use power without paying, because that's what it boils down to. A few days, last week or so, the TCN chief executive, I don't remember his name, said the discos are owing them 132 billion. Is that the reason? 234 billion. And he didn't sound like somebody who recognizes this issue of theft, or who believes that it was theft. The way he said it, it's like people are recovering money, but you're not remitting. They're not remitting back to them. From what it looks like, people are hiding behind the electricity theft and are not remitting money. In fact, he called for the capitalization of the discos. I want you to respond to that.
First.
Okay. My friend says about the law reduction that Yola disco is preaching at the mosques and the churches. This thing is not going to work in this house or in Abuja. You can only preach God words to God-fearing people. One. Yeah. So, what I'm trying to tell you is that some of the people doesn't know that bypassing electricity theft is a crime or sin against humanity and God. So you have to let them know that this product belongs to somebody. You get what I mean? Second issue, on the issue of bypass and the rest, there must be a collaborator. Because a common consumer will not go and temper. Check your staffs very well. Once if you see a customer bypassing, he must identify that person who bypassed the meter for him. Otherwise, he won't disconnect. Second issue, then, penalty for bypass. The present rate we are charging is very, very small. I can give you a scenario. In Maiduguri, a meter was theft, prepayment meter. We discovered somebody brought it that he wants to install that meter. Okay, we took, the owner of that meter came. A customer came, that his meter was stolen. We tagged that meter on our system. Immediately when the guy who installed for him came for vending, we said, where did you get that meter? He said he bought it from a staff or some NEPA tools, they popularly call. Okay, when we investigated, that customer whose meter was stolen didn't vent for 3 years. It is only when his meter was stolen, he came to report that meter is stolen. You get what I'm saying? So the first thing is to monitor your customer very well. Mm-hmm. Customer is not always right. But when it comes to, that's my policy, when he brings his complaints to your office, let him live with happiness. I am a customer, you are a customer. We always favor ourselves. We are not always right. But when a complaint comes to my table, I make sure that that customer lives with happiness after the investigation. Then you tell him that what he did is wrong, and this is the penalty is going to met on him. Then he must identify the guy who bypassed it for him, or he himself, otherwise you take. Second issue we normally do is name and shame. If you are an elite and you bypass your meter in Yola, I will carry NTA. Would police go to your house, snap it? Before I do that, I will inform you. I am going to bring press to show that you are stealing our electricity. Then from there, you go into negotiation. Because nobody wants to be shamed in the public. So this is one of the ways to curb electricity theft. But the main issue, as I said, got to do with our staff. We have to talk the reality to ourselves. And for Yola Disco, I assured my customer that anybody I caught collaborating with a customer to steal my electricity, that's the end of his job. I sat close to 40 marketers on this issue, and it has reduced. Then my brother was asking about the TCN theft. You know, this remittance of 18, unfortunately for TCN, they could have identified Fuji Disco, and Fuji Disco are not remitting well. As far as I know, for MO remittance, for Yola Disco, for the past 3 years, the records are there. I have never remitted less than 75% of their bill. Sometimes I pay 100%.
Of the TCN bill, yeah. I will also ask...
Whenever my collection drops, that is when you see my remittance drop. And the books are there for everybody to see.
I will also ask Mr. Singh if you could also speak to the question about the TCN bill and kind of the economics of where discos sit currently.
All right. Okay. Let me take your question first when you said, what is the tariff that you are paying? The tariff that was set in the last tariff order, which is known popularly as MITO 2015. Okay, and we have cross subsidies built into the tariff. So the tariff is based on an aggregate annual revenue requirement of the distribution company. The distribution company, of course, projects how much power they'll buy, what is the cost of this power in bulk from NBET and GENCOs, and how much they will sell, how much they will recover, what will be their estimated losses for the year, what are your operating expenses, and how much capital expense do you want to do. The capital expense is again normalized at 30% equity contribution and 70% debt. But the top line that says is, I will buy so much energy from the grid. The 2017 tariff, which is now frozen forever, I don't know. The change in tariff was not passed through in 2017, in 2018, and even now. No minor reviews or major reviews have taken place. The top line set 2017 tariff at a grid capacity of nearly 10,000 megawatts. And the average that we get on the grid is less than half of that, around 4,000.
Less megawatts to sell.
Yeah. So, as it is, the tariff is suppressed. It should, even now if you see in the minor review, I can just tell you an example. The industrial customers, the large industrial customers who are paying us 41 naira 45 kobo this year, last year, and in 2017. The tariff has not changed for any category in the last 3 years. If the accumulated losses since MITO 2015 are to be passed through next year, these people will pay nothing less than 77 naira per kilowatt hour. Okay, so the model doesn't really work. You take all the losses accumulated in 3 years since 2015, and you don't spread it over a period of time. There's no parking away, and you ask, next year the tariff will be 77 naira. Nobody is going to pay that. Come on. At 77 naira, it's actually cheaper to generate your own electricity using diesel. Because as of now, if you consider your genset as a standard cost, the operating cost of diesel-based generation, even for a small 5 or 10 kVA set, would be not more than 70 naira. That's based on a diesel price of around 230, and if you have a larger genset and you can buy large quantities of HFO from the market, you can even generate at 55 to 60 naira. Still not cheap. Mains power is still cheap, but to have, it's again the simple thing called economies of scale. The more power you have to sell, the per unit cost will be lower. And that has not come about as yet. And we are not saying that we are remitting it's not possible. Even if I were to collect 100%, I'll still not be able to pay the full bill. The tariff, yeah, because all the cost increases, including gas prices, including foreign exchange variation, including, capex done by TCN and everything, is passed through in the tariff, right? Except our own increase in costs. And it is not adjusted to the lower figure of amount of energy generated and given to discos to sell. So what is happening is, in the last 2 years, the government has been paying a substantial portion of the GenCo's bill through a 701 billion naira intervention. We estimated that it would last for around a couple of years because monthly shortfall in 2016 was around 35 billion per month. And that includes shortfall. Some discos collect more. The urban aid, Eco and Ikeja are definitely, largely urban. And they have very small areas where they are managing and they are able to do much better. For discos covering very large areas like Yola, Kanu, Kaduna, we are covering 3 or 4 states. And the areas could be, in Kanu's case, we are more than 60,000 square kilometers. It's one of the most populous areas in Nigeria, even more than Lagos. Nearly 20 million residents. Yeah. Right? And we expect, and when you ask me, 20 million residents and you have only 500,000 registered customers, it doesn't match. I know. We should have more than a couple of million, but these are the people that we are trying to enlist and say, look, take energy, but take it legally. But then again, that is as far as the tariff and the remittance issue is concerned. In terms of incentivizing people to pay for electricity consumption, of course, metering is the basic answer. But then again, there's a huge amount of dissatisfaction. Why are people bypassing? We try to go into the, customer behavior, a bit of psychology, what happens. So one of the things we did was we metered entire neighborhoods instead of one person here and another person there and all that. What happens if you see that you have run out of credit sometime in the night and your light is off, but the guy next to you who is on estimated bill, he has light because there's no automatic cutoff. So the first instances, first phases, the person will say, I will hook it for tonight, tomorrow morning I'll take it out and I'll go and buy a recharge. So the first time he does it, it's fine. He consumes through the night a little bit of energy, then, he's a bit honest, he goes buy a recharge and recharges his meter, his light. Next month, same thing happens again. He runs out of credit. His wife starts complaining and his neighbor has light. This time he hangs it, let it hang for a few more days, And then it becomes a habit. Why the hell do I need to pay for it?
And with these cases, how are you engaging the customers both to let them know the issues that it causes for you and giving them an opportunity to be heard and, as this gentleman was mentioning, make sure that they can get a meter or get what they need?
Well, one of the key things to improve the supply side and revenue recovery is to, of course, make sure that everybody is metered and everybody pays for what they consume. At the same time, you need to provide enough electricity so that people are generally satisfied with the service. In Kanu, we get around, on an average, 140 to 150 million kilowatt hours in a month, right? Around 45 to 50 million units are consumed by the MD customers, the large industries, the large commercial outlets and all that. I have maybe, after accounting for technical losses, I have around 50 to 60 million units to be billed to the houses and the residential customers. which is the largest block of customers we have, right? And if you just estimate, if everybody was consuming equally, it's just 100 units a month that you get. 100 units a month at current tariff will cost you maybe 2,400 naira. But that's not the case, right? You have three-phase customers, you have customers with larger appliances and this thing. And it's not possible because people are consuming, the larger houses will be consuming close to 1,000 to 1,500 units in a month, right? If you have like 5 or 6 air conditioners in houses, I've seen up to 9 or 10 sometimes. And they're naturally consuming, up to 3,000, 4,000 units in a month. We have residential bills that are as high as 100,000 naira. So what happens to the rest of the people? I mean, if I have only 50 million units to distribute among 500,000 people, another 500,000 who I don't even know they're consuming, each person gets maybe 50 units. And 50 units or below is R1 customer. So are all my customers R1? No. So which means a lot of people, a very large section of the area, of the 3 states, a very large number of people don't see light at all during the month, maybe for a week or 10 days. And even I feel, it's not enough. We have to be able to give them more. So if they are satisfied, they'll voluntarily come forward. On the other side, we have what we call a whistleblower policy, where we encourage people that if you identify theft or bypass of meters or any other issue, we'll share whatever reward comes our
And
way.
is that for customers or employees?
Well, employees, it's part of their job,
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
really.
True.
They have to identify this.
I just know in some countries there's incentive
Unless,
payments for that.
we believe that our employees have enough integrity to bring it to the notice
Fair
of
enough.
people, and so although we are providing incentives now to employees as well, but not the people who are involved in monitoring the meters and checking for theft and bypass.
And before we have another round of questions, I want to give Mr. Mwabueze a chance to speak. We had the question about metering and how long it takes to get a meter. I was interested to hear from your perspective, in your case working with Kaduna, if someone like him were to come to ask how to get a meter, how long do you expect that it'll take for somebody to apply and deploy a meter?
Let me start by apologizing to you. I know I'm not directly responsible for the delay you getting your meter, but at the same time, I know how it feels, when you pay for something and you don't get it. This has been the case, with CAPME, in the old days, when they many years ago when they were doing CAPME. I mean, we had issues, regarding people making payments and the meters never came. And that was based on the way CAPME was managed at the time. CAPME wasn't run very well. And there was no monitoring, there was no control. You had issues with meter installers, dumping the meters in drinking parlors and gardens and sometimes under someone's bed, and they claimed that the meters had been installed. So you had issues like that, and many customers didn't get their meters. And the regulation says that if you make payment, you're supposed to get your meter. And if you bring this to the attention of NERC will definitely make sure that you get your meter, even if it was done many years ago under CAPME. The fact that you've paid and you have evidence of your payment, if you take it to NERC and petition NERC will go directly to the DISCO responsible and make sure that they give you your meter because you've already paid for it. But that was then, that is the past. Let me now tell you about what we are doing, because now this is MAP, okay? We are not CAPME. We are not part of that, and we don't do scam, all right? So if you pay for your meter today, the regulation says within 10 days, you get your meter. And if the meter malfunctions any point in time within that period, the 10-year period that we are supposed to manage it, you get a replacement within 2 days. That's what the regulation says. Okay? And none of us want to go run foul of the regulation because there's all manner of remedies around it. We are having to provide all manner of guarantees. We are providing performance, bonds and things like that. So nobody wants to have his performance bond called in. Okay? I wish you were in Kaduna. I wish you were in my area. I'll give you a meter tomorrow. But you're not.
All right, now another round of questions. Oh.
Yeah, there's some questions back here.
There's not any other upfront payment scheme in Kanu. Everybody who paid for it has got a meter.
Letting the discos give their rebuttal.
Thank you. For Yola Disco, on the CABME, we have some issues. Customer paid, just went and pay in the bank. Come and collect your meter. Up to today, we publish in 3 daily newspapers and pasted in all our service centers and BU. Any customer who has paid and should come with his evidence of payment so that the money is already there in the CABME account. Up to this moment I am talking to you, we have about 5,600,000 naira being paid by customer. But no customer come forward to claim that he paid and he didn't get the meter. Any customer who has that evidence in Yola discussion, come with his evidence. Tomorrow he will get his meter.
All right. Let's take some more questions.
There's some in the back here.
Amount of metering that you've been doing under MAP, what is the percentage like of people who have been switching for an installment scheme? Like one is you pay outright and get your meters where you don't pay the insurance and all, and the other is like you pay insurance and all and you get it on an installment basis. So how much of the percentage is going for an installment basis? Thank you.
My name is Abdullah Junaid Sineji. Yeah, Mr. Nwabueze, good evening. The question will be, as MAP, now that this government is in place, what are you guys doing to making sure that really we have these meters properly distributed to Nigerians? Can you also tell Nigerians precisely what is the amount of meters that has been at least put in place now? Engineer Mustapha, we heard you put a lot of power and most of sensitization in the mosque. I want to ask you, when you talk about theft, taking it to the mosque, is there anything like theft? Because stealing itself, if not because of connivance from your staffs, I think there's not going to be at least anything like stealing the meters. So I don't think there's anything like theft in Nigeria because you guys who are also AEDC, you're also cheating Nigerians, and so that rascality begets rascality. Mr. CEO Kanu, CEO Kanu, the situation we are having in Nigeria, I don't know where you are coming from, but you see, we've been having difficulties in assessing what we call power in Nigeria. You are here today, you've at least said a lot of things, which is encouraging, but I don't think if some of all these things have trickled down to what this society really requires. So what are you doing also to making sure that Nigerians gain what you have said so far? Because one thing I also want to at least tell the people who are also organizing dialogue is that I think most of the times there's no need for us to bring contractors to come and answer some of all these questions. We must have government officials that can always come and tell us what is the roadmap for bringing proper light to Nigerians. We are suffering as far as lighting is concerned in Nigeria. So that's my contribution.
Good evening, everybody. I have two questions. The first one is, I want to talk about MAP. Why is it that in the MAP, because when we talk about metering solutions, we keep on looking at prepayment metering solutions. Why is there no postpaid metering solutions in MAP? Because the prepayment metering solution is expensive and it is prone to theft. This question I'm directing it to the MD, CEO, India, Kanu, and the MAP man. Why I say that is that I know in India, 80% of their customers are on postpaid. It's mostly government parastatals and agencies that are on prepaid. Because when we talk about metering, prepayment metering is not the only solution. Then the second one is that in terms of energy theft and bypasses and tampering, what is how much are the discos engaging with government agencies like NEC, making laws, having something like court-martial laws? Because the truth is this: you cannot limit tampering and bypasses. You can only mitigate it. But if there is a strong government regulations in terms of when a customer is caught on bypass, there is a court martial to immediately address the issue. It will help a lot. So I want to know how much the discos are engaging with law agencies and all that in terms of these are my two questions.
Okay.
Mine is more of a comment, maybe a question at the end of it. So I worked for a generation company. I worked at the metering units in the generation company. And one of the things we were doing is customer sensitization. I mean, we were really hampering on it. We call up our customers, we ask them if there are any issues. I mean, we tell them like little things as change your bulb, put up this, when do you use your washing machine, or how can you effectively manage your consumption. So just getting them aware of what they can do or how they can take steps to reduce their consumption goes a long way. I hear customer sensitization, implementing a lot of things, but I haven't received something as little as a pamphlet, in your doorstep, just telling you the steps you can take to reduce consumption. In the night or the morning, this is when your bills are high, or what light can you use, what light bulb can you use, to reduce your consumption to this level. It goes a long way, in combating this electricity theft, because they really feel that you're close to them, and they can always, come to you or call you up whenever they have issues. So I like to see things like that, more of customer sensitization, going around telling them what customer class they are in. Most people don't even know what class they are in. They don't know how much they're consuming. My neighbor keeps asking me, how much am I paying? What's my list? And I have to explain. I'm privileged to be in the sector, so I know how much, or what class the person is. I can explain to them, this is how much your bill is, or this is how much you're consuming. But some things like that goes a long way in reducing electricity theft. Thank you.
Matthew, my own is a suggestion and a question at the same time. To the discourse, how do you intend to cope with certain settlements? If you have an organized estate, it's very easy to monitor, it's very easy to install your meters. But I can assure you in some other settlements, Gwagwa, Karimu, go and install your meter there. One, I can assure you, it will be stolen, you will never get any revenue from there. My suggestion is, in areas like that, why don't you organize either an off-grid system for them? Or else you're going to continue to lose revenue, they will continue to steal electricity. That's just the truth. Electricity theft has been as old as electricity in this country. That's just it. Thank you.
And is there a strategy for how you engage?
One, the strategy that the DISCO should put in place for such a settlement is to, first of all, tidy up your networks in those locations. Then you opt for pole-mounted meters. That one, before somebody will climb the pole and steal your meters, somebody will detect him. Secondly, the issue of bypass would be eliminated with a pole-mounted meter, unlike the one being mounted on the panel whereby you will, like Gwagwa, you may find the houses whereby you will go there and say, Bashiga, no entry for you to monitor your meter. So the only solution to this area is to put a pole-mounted transformer, pole-mounted meters for them individually, so that you can see if the person is bending, then the bending unit should be in his house. Go and buy your credit, note it. at your own height, but you will not tamper with the meter on the pole.
Tamper-proof.
Yeah, tamper-proof.
And then a question for Mr. Singh. Is Kanu doing anything with customer sensitization to both help them understand why they need to pay and then also prepare them for different initiatives like the MAP program?
Yes, we do. In fact, we have, every region has an expense budget, which is a monthly budget allocated to them specifically for community engagement, as we call it. We are covering these informal settlements, as we call it, also. Primarily those low-income areas, and we sensitize them on, the responsibility for paying for whatever they are being supplied. A lot of times the feedback immediately is always very positive, but the customers also expect at the same time an increase in electricity supply. If I don't see, at least half a day of electricity or a full day, ideally, I'm still unsatisfied at the end of the day. And we have to engage and tell them what are the constraints, from generation to transmission to distribution and financing of the increased installed base that we need. The gentleman in that blue shirt, he said a few things about the whole sector and whole of Nigeria. Yes, you're right. I mean, the main responsibility for improving the situation is with people of Nigeria. We are here as consultants or service providers or helping you to, achieve that. Just a thumb rule based assessment, you require anywhere between 25 to 30 billion dollars in generation and investment in upstream generation. Almost an equivalent amount in transmission grid and downstream as well. All put together in distribution metering and everything put together, nearly 80 to 90 billion dollars, not even naira, is required to have an expectation of, a normalized 24/7 electricity supply. Everybody is happy and everybody is willing to pay for it. But where is that 80 billion dollars going to come from? Sorry? No, I think USAID and others also have assessed similar numbers, right?
Yeah.
Somebody was saying $100 billion. I said, yeah, that's close to what I thought about.
Well, and I think once you get into some of those numbers, it's a lot of money. And you need to fix some of the fundamentals.
Right, and we need to look at, we also looked at, when we are doing the load forecast, for example, we looked at macroeconomic data. The GDP, the growth in GDP. At that time when we were doing it close to end of last year, 2017, 16, 17, and nearly 6 quarters of recession. The country had just come out of almost 6 quarters of successive recession or contracting of the GDP, right? Okay. And 2018 was a turnaround year, however, and but the rate of growth was hardly 2.1% or 2.2%, something like that. And another key data that came to this thing was from United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the Brookings Institute report, which talks about more than 91 million Nigerians, that's nearly 50% of the total population, living in what is defined as extreme poverty, which means less than $1 a day. If you are getting $300, which is also not very certain, that's an average amount, how much can you really spend on food, your children, your home, and at the same time buy electricity worth nearly $100? That's 1/3 of your entire income. So basically, what we say is we need not just investment in electricity sector. Electricity is a driver, right? But you need much more economic activity. You need to invest in manufacturing, agriculture, services, You need to provide jobs to people. You need to really do something, not your NAPEP and SureP nonsense, because that's just conduit.
I think we'll stop with the edge of the electricity sector for this
thank you.
for this session, but certainly agree there's important points in there. And I mean, I think part of the reason why we're here is figuring out how the sector can start to provide better service to customers and begin to meet customers where they're at. Some of that is this meter asset provider program, getting the assets in place so that people have that measure of their consumption and there's less finger pointing going back and forth. For Mr. Nwabueze, the meter asset provider. For customers here and people that are thinking about participating in the meter asset provider program, you had said most people so far were doing the upfront payment, but what percentage do you think will do the installment payments versus paying upfront? Because that is a big outlay for a lot of people.
Yes, it's a very tricky question. The idea is to start with the customers that are making outright payments. And once we finish with them, then we now move on to the customers who want an instrumental arrangement. And I cannot sit here and tell you that I know the actual number of people who are willing to pay up front, unless, of course, if I'm a witch doctor or maybe a prophet in the church. So basically, we are hoping, like for me, I'm hoping because it's going to reduce my investment in terms of the capital outlay. If I can get, say for instance, 100% customers who want to pay outright, I'll be laughing, I'll be very, very happy, but I don't think that is going to happen. So let's hope that it's going to be in the region of 50-50 or 40-60. So if that is the case, whichever way we're going to do it, But first of all, we are going to focus on the outright, customers who are paying outright, upfront. Then after that, we go to the ones who are willing to do instrumental. And like the gentleman that asked question about availability of meters, yes, the meters are actually available. If you make payment, you get your meter. But don't pay to me directly. You know what to do. Go to your disco and then do the paperwork and you get your meter. And the gentleman that was asking questions about switching from outright payment to installment, that is a bit confusing for me. Because basically you have two options. You make payment up front, you get your meter. We don't bother you with every monthly, to make additional payment to us. You get your insurance, you get everything, you are covered for the period of 10 years. If your meter goes bad, we replace it. But if you want to pay by installment, yes, that option is also available, to you if that's what you want. But in Kaduna, there's something that we are doing that is a bit more flexible. We are trying to see if we can get customers to do a bit of both of them. Like you make some deposit payment, then we can now spread out the balance, for that period. That way it reduces your burden and your initial outlay. That's an option that is available to some of the, the customers in Kaduna. I don't know about here in Abuja or Yola or Kanu.
And then to add one question from the gentleman in the pink, in your case, will most of the meters you're providing be prepayment, or will there be any postpaid meters in there as well?
In Kaduna, for instance, we actually do have an option of postpaid, for postpaid customers, postpayment. But you have to understand that the decision to rely mostly on prepaid is based on previous experiences. We have the history of people not willing to make payments, because when you talk about credit, you have to look at the character of the individual, not just the capacity. The capacity is ability to pay. Character is willingness to pay. Most customers are not willing to make payments. That's when you look at some of their records, the delinquent debts, customers they have, some dates back to even before my father was born. These customers have accumulated so much from generation to generation because they don't want to pay. You give them the bill, they go to they go and try and compromise even the officials by tipping them and asking them, hey, we pay next month. Next month leads to next month. Before you know it is a year, 2, 3. So basically, the postpaid is available. But what we are trying to do now with the postpaid is to focus on the rural areas where the consumption is relatively low. And we know that we can actually get them to pay by using their religious leaders or their chiefs and their elders, who will now persuade them to pay. These are the customers we are focusing because their consumption rate is relatively low. But in the townships, in the urban areas, yes, it's still available if you ask. But the discos will probably discourage you. They will insist that you do, prepaid. This, it's down to the discos. Whatever they tell us is what we do.
That makes sense.
On the upfront payment, I don't know other discos. For Yola disco, when we start the map, some cooperative societies approach us that those customers who could not pay upfront, they are ready to provide that money, but with single interest rate, which is far, far less than the meter being financed by the MAF. We said we are going to sensitize our customers who are ready to go into that, meet that cooperative society to provide them with the money. Then how they will recover their money is between the lender and the taker. That's how we are trying to do, so that let's bridge that metering gap as quickly as possible.
Okay. Yeah, now a few more questions.
Not believing that it's going to effectively solve the problem. There are not a lot of Nigerians who would readily spend 70,000 naira to get a meter, especially if the meter does not guarantee that they're going to get increased supply. Yeah? The trade-off would be put a little bit of money, buy Better Pass My Neighbor, and just deal with the fuel cost. So I've always wondered why it's the consumer who's expected to bear the cost for something that will be of value to the discos. Now, isn't it possible for the discos, the MAPs, and the local meter manufacturers to come together and finance a massive deployment of meters such that when everyone has meters, then the revenues collection is more optimized and you can pay off the cost of acquiring those meters versus hoping that a few people who can afford it would buy, and if only they buy, then you can have a situation where there's a migration out of the grid, which then puts us in a death spiral. Yeah? So I've always wondered why there couldn't be a structure where if we believe that the map is the way to go, raise the funds, do a massive deployment, and make your money at the end of the day.
Osasu, I work for Nextier Power. A couple of questions. So my first question goes to Yola Disco, but he's not here, so I'm going to skip that. Secondly, MAP. So when it comes to ownership of meters, right? Yes. We have this issue where so many people who are tenants who do not own buildings go and pay for meters and pay in advance. What happens when some of these people want to live where they are? And as consumers, I'm looking at myself as a consumer, you can't tell me that I cannot take my meter after paying for it, even though the house is not mine. So what do we do to enable customers know the right way to go about even requesting for meters, ensuring that it's the landlords who ask for the meters in the first place? What do we do in terms of customer engagement to make people know this? Secondly, how, when it comes to theft, again, technology we know puts an end to so many of these issues that we are talking about, and that's the truth. But I realize that many of us, we are not really bringing up the technology issue. So what can we do in terms of back-end technology, especially when it comes to detection of tampering of customer meters? What can we do in that respect Because we know that it might be expensive, but in the long run, it might be the best way to go. Because the truth is, as a Nigerian, as long as you can steal power without getting caught, you would continue to steal power. But then if there is something that would even prevent you from touching the meter in the first place, then it solves the problem that we are trying to face.
One, David Arinze, and I'm an off-grid energy specialist. First of all, I want to applaud Nextier for being so spot on with this meter issue. Nextier, well done. Please, a round of applause for Nextier, please. The reason why I say it is, on today's paper, The Guardian, page 27, if you don't understand anything about maps, just go there and read through. You'll be properly educated. But my question is, now to the discourse, and also to the meter asset provider. Someone was interviewed, and I want to read verbatim. He said most of these distribution companies prefer to give prepaid meters to those households with existing debt, because so that recovery could be easily done with credit units as procured. Please, I want you to all help debunk whether it's, let's call it a rumor. So on this platform, we need to address this. Also, we have here that most residents have, most of the people providing these meters have turned into a racket, where people pay up to 100,000 naira for a meter to fast track the process of getting their meters. For a meter, they would have paid about 67,055 naira, 85 kobo. Also, look at this. $100,000 is about almost $300. If you check the rates globally, a single-phase meter is about $80 or even less. A three-phase meter is about $150, $170. Don't you think that the price that these meters are put at may be a reason why people are not purchasing these meters or not even willing to pay the premium that they are being told to pay? So I think that these are areas that we need to look at. I know there are a lot of issues that you are dealing with, but you have to help us on this platform debunk these claims, because I can imagine how many people have read this document today and have this mindset that people are making your businesses not look as amazing as, and appreciate the great work that you're doing. Thank you.
Coming in from online.
So there are a few questions from WhatsApp and text messages. So the first one is, what are you doing about the new meters which already have incurred debts of hundreds of thousands of naira, and then the discos cut you off if you refuse to settle them? So that's the first question. Then how will the MAPs handle issues pertaining to bad meters that the discos usually neglect to preferred estimated billing? And then the third question is, what is the remedy of a consumer whose meter is being tapped by a fellow consumer?
Kind of sounds like dog ate my homework.
And the last question, what can one do when the discos are slow in responding to your complaint?
Okay. What is going on in the back office? What kind of technology will the meters that you're providing have? Or what will they be capable of?
Right. During my introduction, I did mention the issue of metering and versus revenue assurance. That is one big challenge we are trying to resolve. All right, because initially when the regulation was drafted, it was supposed to be, revenue assurance, that's the back office, the MAI. It was supposed to be part of the MAP, scope of work. But when they now looked at, the pricing, implications, the cost implication, like you were rightfully raising issues and concerns about that, NERC decided that it might be too much of a burden for a customer to pay for the meter as well as contribute towards the back office infrastructure. And they decided to separate the two. They're saying that MAP focus on just providing the meters. Let the discos take care of the back end. But you have to understand that without the back end, the so-called smart meter is nothing, it's dumb. You know? So how can you possibly monitor, what the customer is doing if the meter is being tampered with or bypassed or anything like that, when you don't have the technology that will enable you to be able to dictate all these things? So it's a big issue, but the discos they're beginning to realize, yes, this thing has to be taken care of. They have to do something about it. So we are still in the process of trying to resolve it. So that's basically what it is. And for me, I'm sorry if I sound a bit selfish, but I'm only concerned about my business. I'm only concerned about how to recover my investment. All right? If I put XYZ amount of money in this project, I expect to get it back. And I expect to get the cost of finance, and I expect to get reasonable margin on top of it. I'm not going to exploit anybody. That's reasonable. So if I'm going to install these meters with or without back end from the disco and the disco side of things, I'm going to put some solutions in place, some technology in place for me at least to monitor my investment to be able to get my money back. I'm not going to tell my creditors that this and that happened. I can't do that. All right? So basically, the question you asked, this is the answer to it. But another thing I want to point out is, that interview we're reading, I don't know who gave that interview. I don't know, what frequency is operating from. Suggesting that people are having to make some kind of racket out of it, that they're extorting 100,000 before meters can be provided. That is not true. It's impossible. That is not true. Listen, if you register, I don't know what disco, like if you're here in Abuja, obviously it's AEDC. If you register for MAP with AEDC, I know some of the maps there, they are already installing meters for customers. And none of them is asking you to come and give them something under the table. No, that is not true. Register, make payment, you get your meter. If you don't get your meter, NERC is there. Complain to them, that MAP will be sanctioned. Okay?
And what happens if you get a bad meter?
You get replacement.
Get a replacement.
You get replacement, within 2 days, within a couple of days, you get replacement. That is part of the regulation. Yeah.
Now, how is the meter asset provider program going to help to displace or how are you going to help customers believe that the meters they get from you or from your utility are going to work? Because, we're hearing stories about people paying 3 or 4 times the price for meters. We're hearing people worried about getting bad meters, or we're hearing stories about new meters with debt already on them. How is your utility going to deal with those concerns?
First of all, on the quality of the meters to be supplied by MAP, all of them will be subject to a test by Nigerian Electricity Services Agency, NEMSA, and issue a certificate of certification to that MAP before we allow. If we don't see NEMSA certificate, we won't allow any MAP to install a meter to our customer. This will determine the integrity of that meter to the customers. And on the pricing you are talking about, those pricing were not determined by the discourse. It was a procurement process, a competitive procurement process. We advertised, this is the specification we need. We didn't give them, bring at that cost. Then the MAP quoted for those prices. We evaluated them, we took the lowest evaluated responsive bidder's price. Then, as I earlier said, after seeing the price, now somebody is quoting for single phase in Lagos, 70,000, in Abuja, 40,000. In Yola, a MAP is quoting 30,000. So NAC came and said, no, it can't be like that. They have their own in-house price for the meters, markup with transportation, insurance, and profit. Then this is the amount you will charge for a single phase. This is the amount you will charge for a three-phase for a customer. For upfront, this is what you will charge. For meter financing, this is what a customer will pay within 10 years. If you are okay with that price, go ahead and sign agreement with the discos. But that ceiling should not be exceeded. So the price is not determined by the discos. Rather, it is being determined by the MAP, then regulated by NAC, just to protect the customers.
And then one last question before we wrap up. I wanted to ask Mr. Singh and then also Mr. Nwabueze, how is Kanu Disco making sure that their meters are quality and effective? I mean, we heard mention of NEMSA, but does Kanu also have meter testing facilities to make sure that the meters that are getting installed in the system work?
Okay, we had a two-stage technical qualifying process, right? And one of the key criteria is that you would have done a type test approved by NEMSA of your devices, meters. And the other criteria for supplying meters in Kanu, or Kanu license area, Kanu, Katsina, Jigawa, would be to have passed through the routine inspection as well, which means each meter that is supplied in Kanu area will have a NEMSA certified sticker on it, right? So that's as far as the testing at front end goes. And also for any customer that feels that his meter is faulty or is fast or slow, or nobody complains about slow meters anyway, but if they feel that their meters are fast, we have a device, a portable device. You can lodge a complaint, our engineers will go test your meter, and the device, basically it's a meter connected in parallel and you shoot a burst of energy through it, and if both meters record the same consumption, your meter is fine. So it's a standardized calibrated meter, and we can, prove to you that the meter is working fine. In case it's not, of course, we change the meter.
That makes sense. So, and then, Mr. Nwabueze, is the meter asset provider going to have a role to play here as well in terms of making sure that quality meters are getting to customers?
Oh yes, it's part of the requirement. It's the condition. Whatever meter you're bringing in has to be type tested and has to be certified. You cannot just bring any meter and start deploying it, to the customers in a residence. You are not allowed to do that. Or every single meter has to be tested by NEMSA. Then after that, you still have to take it to the disco for them to calibrate it. Some of them also have their own in-house laboratory. They insist on running a check on the meter over and over again before you can actually do it. So there's no issue about substandard meters being brought into NEC. No, it's not possible.
May I ask a question? Okay, my question would be, if you have recovered the cost of the meter up front, like say you have a stock of, let's say, assuming 10,000 meters, in 1 month you sell them all.
Yes.
What is the incentive for you to keep maintaining that meter for the next 10 years?
That is a big issue. We've had to, I've been scratching my head for weeks now regarding that particular aspect of the project and the contract. And they have not actually given me any kind of reasonable answer to that particular question, because I've asked that question a number of times. And it's so complex because, first of all, now that we are having to deal with the issue of we are not sure who is going to be responsible for the AMI. Right. A customer pays me now. I'll provide the meter, install the meter for the customer, and the disco fails to monitor the customer. I've done my job, you know that. I've taken my money. So the incentive for me to be running around seeing if the customer is vending, it's not there. But I'm only concerned when when something happens to that meter and then the customer is asking for a replacement or some kind of repair or whatever, that is where I now come back in. So what we are doing is this. We have insurance, which we have to pay out of our own pocket. We have insurance, and then insurance, against defects, against all manner of things. Then at the same time, we are trying to create some kind of buffer. Although it adds to the cost, the total cost of, the project itself, but we are looking for a way where the DISCO, I'm hoping, Mr. CEO, I'm hoping that maybe when you go back, when you guys decide, start discussing these things, spare a thought for Paul Road, Mr. Emeka, okay? So, because it's going to be a big problem.
The initiation of the process, I was all for the process, right? That, okay, we don't have the finance to purchase all the devices that we need. So somebody who has the wherewithal to bring in the money and the devices, let them provide that, and let us recover the money for the meters through tariff. That was the whole point of the exercise, right?
Yeah.
And people would pay separately for the map provided meters, and people who already have meters will be paying the usual tariff. And we even did an exercise of taking out the existing historical meter cost from our capital base and deriving how much reduction would be on the energy for people who are paying separately for their individual meters. So all that exercise went to nothing, if you're going to pay up front, if he gets, for example, in Kanu, if he got one region with 50,000 meters, based on the speed with which we can do this work. Let's say 10,000 people come up front and they pay, and then he says, look, nobody else is coming. Next year, there's no incentive for him to come back.
Well, we're running out of time, but one thing I wanted to say before we wrap up is that I think the hope is that some of those requirements would be put into the meter services contract to hold the MAP accountable for replacing the meter and to give some recourse for customers to make sure that they're getting a replacement.
How do you make that work? You have to hold something of it, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not holding anything, he has recovered the cost of the meter.
Yeah.
Next year he can just, I've sold 10,000 meters, my stock or my capacity. I'm not bothered anymore. You won't find any map anywhere in Nigeria after that.
Well, it's a tough note to wrap up on, but I think I want to thank everybody for their time, thank everybody for coming out here. I love seeing how many people come to these things and how many people are passionate about the sector. It's a really important issue that we're dealing with. Theft is really difficult, as I think all of our panelists have spoken to, but it's important that people are still working towards solving these issues so that we can get the Nigerian economy where it needs to go. So thank you. And I'm not sure, does Emeka or someone from the Nextier team have something they want to add?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Victoria Omachi. On behalf of Nextier Power, I would like to thank you all. I'd like to thank you all for taking our time to attend the dialogue and for the informative questions you've asked. To our seasoned panelists, thank you so much for the years of experience and knowledge that you brought to the dialogue. We'd like to say thank you to McCollester Foundation and to the men of the press present here. We have recognized the need to follow on suggested actions from the Nextier dialogue. At the February 2019 Nextier Power Dialogue, there was a consensus to carry out risk assessment of meter assets provider regulations on all relevant stakeholders. We put in the necessary work to ensure a robust risk assessment was carried out involving the relevant stakeholders in the process. Key concern areas identified include revenue assurance, cost of financing, customer knowledge and engagement, process influences, human capacity for implementation, electricity network quality, and faulty meters. The deliverable is a concise risk assessment summary which will be shared with the electricity regulator NEC for consideration or possible adjustments of these risk areas. We would also share copies of the report with every dialogue participant through the Nigeria Electricity Hub newsletter. Everyone is encouraged to look out for that. And as you step out, we still have chops at the back. Please stay back and network with us. Thank you very much for attending the dialogue. Good night.